Everybody's muted?
They are muted. Do you want me to introduce you at all?
You can say something and then I'll follow.
Let me say something. I met Marcia fairly recently, and I guess it was when you visited here at church. You first came to the men's gay chorus, and then you came to the burning bowl service. And at least what she told me is that she really loved the feel of it and the community and the teachings. And I'll condense this. And we've had some time one-on-one with each other. And I'm sorry. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, say, oh, I love this book, or, oh, I wrote this book. And they give me things to read. Marcia gave me a book, Quest, and I thought, well, oh. And I thought, well, do I really need another book to read? You know, I read a lot, but there was something about it that spoke to me. So I thought, well, let me start reading it. And I mean, really quickly, I got really into this. At points, I was sobbing. I guess the main character, the protagonist in the story, is someone with whom I can relate, who had kind of lost his life, lost his way, and was resistant to finding the way. And there were things that happened in his life to help him to really embrace his life. I mean, and there's three basic principles in it that really spoke to me. I'm not going to give it away. Thank you. I mean, I could do a series of messages from your book.
Go for it.
And I may. But anyway, I first saw Marcia, you know, in when we lived here before, when she was in the role of acting and doing, was it a one-woman show?
A two-woman show, Money Talks, but what the hell is it saying?
Right. And so anyway, I'm just thrilled that Marcia and her husband Dennis are here, part of our community, and have gotten very involved here. And so I present Marcia Zina Mager.
So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for everybody coming. It means a lot to me that you're here, that you took this time. I want to thank Tim. I want to thank Unity Church of Honolulu for giving me this opportunity. It really means a lot to me. So, I'm going to do a little like teaser trailer, like you do when there's a movie or television series. So here's the teaser. Once upon a time, there was a woman riding her bicycle through the neighborhood of Kailua when a big red hibiscus bush shouted at her. She got off her bicycle, took out her journal, and started writing down everything she heard. She had no idea that this was going to change her life. This is not a fairy tale. This actually happened to me, and I'll tell you more about it as we get into this talk. And the title of this talk is Praise Where You Are, Earth Wisdom to Heal Ourselves and Our Planet. So I want to introduce myself briefly a little bit more. So I'm a writer. I've been a writer since the late 70s, early 80s. I've written everything from romance novels to cookbooks about tarot and poi. I've written for television. I've been on television. I've been an actor, a playwright, a book coach, a writing coach. So very diverse resume, so to speak. But this experience that I teased you with really impacted me, and that's why I'm here today. And, you know, I guess one of the things I want to say is that I've been on Hawaii Five-0, I've been on television, I've been on stage, I've been on radio, I've talked about lots of things, and I have never spoken publicly about this.
Wow.
So this is a big deal for me because this is so close to my heart, and I've been challenged by it. I've been challenged by the material. The experience produced 3 books. The last one being Quest, a novel, and I'm going to talk today about my experience with nature, my journey with these 3 books, and specifically the theme that runs through 3 books that is all about praise. So that's what I'm really going to focus on today. So the 3 books that I wrote, the first, they're all here if anybody's interested in buying them. The first one is Believing in Fairies, a manual for grown-ups. Second one is The Hidden Kingdom, Discovering the Divine Presence in Nature. And the third one is Quest, an illustrated novel. So I'm also, because I've struggled with embodying and taking in what was given to me that ran through these 3 books, I'm really appreciative that you're here and hoping that somehow by me talking about it, and we'll have a Q&A at the end, that it's going to just sort of help me to deepen my connection and understanding of the material. Okay, so I'd like to do a quick little meditation to just bring us all to be a little bit of a, just to get our energies here, mine included. So, and that, I didn't welcome everybody on Zoom. Hi, Zoomers. And so you can join us with this meditation. So I'm just going to ask you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes and just relax. And just notice the sounds that you hear. Notice your breath. Don't try and do anything with it, just notice it. Notice the seat you're sitting in. And I'd like you to imagine or remember something in nature that has meaning for you. This could be imaginary or it could be real. Maybe it's your favorite stretch of beach. Maybe it's a garden. Maybe it's a tree that you sat under as a child. Maybe it's even just a vase of fresh flowers. So take a moment and bring that picture or that feeling into yourself. And just relax your heart. And I'm going to invite you to lower your head, bow your head. This is something I learned from the Sufis. You bow your head because it's showing that your mind is surrendered to your heart. So just bow your head and think about or imagine or feel this moment with nature. And just acknowledge wherever you are. Acknowledge the tree, the ocean, the flowers. Wherever you are, just inwardly acknowledge it. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the room. Okay, so now, are you ready for a real fairy tale?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a selection. In this talk, in this hour, I'm just going to read some brief selections from all three books. And I'm going to read a selection from Quest. So I'm going to read you a little blurb on the back of the book so we have some context. Alan Quinn Fitzpatrick is no hero. A failed writer and middle-aged bachelor, he can't seem to find love or happiness. When he encounters a fantastical creature in New York City's Central Park, he's convinced he's lost his mind. But when he loses his job and finds a mysterious one-way ticket to Ireland, he grudgingly embarks on an extraordinary adventure, one that leads him deep into the unseen, mystical realm of nature. What he discovers changes everything, forcing him to make a powerful decision. Will he retreat back into what's safe and familiar, or embrace a profound new way to see nature, the world, and most importantly, himself? That just gives you some context, because I'm going to jump in to chapter 17. And the only thing I'll tell you about chapter 17 is that Alan, the character, is in it, and this fantastical creature is in it, and she's a tiny winged woman that calls herself Fairy with an E, F-A-E-R-Y. He hadn't gone very far, perhaps a mile or so, when he heard the sound. He thought it was a bird singing. As he got closer, he realized the sounds were words, strange words he couldn't understand. A melodic, haunting voice, a melodic, haunting song. His first thought was of Catherine. As he listened, the voice sounded much too young. He crept closer until he spotted a girl, about 10 or 11 years old, long braided hair, singing and dancing in the middle of the woods. He knelt beside a small boulder, not wanting to startle her. It appeared she was singing to a felled tree, a massive oak that looked newly cut. The slice, smooth and clean, obviously done by the hand of a man, or hand of men. The stump itself was perhaps 5 feet in diameter. The tree had crashed down a few feet away. The young girl was singing in a different language. Alan thought he recognized the rhythm and cadence as Gaelic, reminding him of lullabies his mother sang to him as a child. Although he couldn't understand a word, he could feel their meaning. The little girl seemed to be pleading, her pure, sweet voice laced with sadness. She moved slowly, gracefully, eyes closed, head back in a pose of abandon, her small hand lightly stroking the severed surface. Sometimes she'd brush her fingers along the body of the felled trunk, always moving, swaying, singing. Alan watched transfixed, wanting more than anything to know what she was saying. I'd be happy to translate. Startled, he whirled around. Fairy hovered right in front of him. Where have you? Before he could finish the question, Fairy touched her feather-like finger to his lips. Then, fluttering even closer, she began softly singing in English. Gentle tree, I cry for thee, your beauty bold, your wisdom old. O gentle tree, please grow for me. I sing thy praises, I sing for thee. Alan turned back to the young girl. Over and over she sang this haunting song, and over Fairy softly sang the words. Gentle tree, I cry for thee, your beauty bold, your wisdom old. O gentle tree, please grow for me. I sing thy praises, I sing for thee. Fairy stopped singing, and only the young girl's innocent voice could be heard. She began to cry, but her chanting would not cease, nor the graceful movements of her dance. Alan fought the sorrow welling up inside. A great melancholy swept over him. It had been a majestic tree, the ancient Celts' beloved dwar, a mighty oak, worshipped as king of the forest, a sacred symbol of immortal strength and fertility. Its powerful branches abundant with dark green leaves and golden acorns, a tree that had stood for more than 200 years. He tried to make sense of it. He knew all the reasons. We need the wood for house and schools. We need the wood for hospitals and books. We need the wood. Yet his sorrow remained, logic unable to wash it away. The magnificent tree was dead. The young girl continued chanting her song. Gentle tree, I cry for thee, your beauty bold, your wisdom old. O gentle tree, please grow for me. I sing thy praises, I sing for thee. She sang and danced for hours. Rooted, he couldn't move, mesmerized by the enchanting spell. Fairy sat quietly on his shoulder, nestled comfortably in the crook of his neck. Soon the forest grew eerily quiet. Birds ceased chattering. Leaves stopped rustling. Insects stopped buzzing, and branches no longer creaked or swayed. Nothing but perfect stillness. The young girl's words stinging the silence. She continued her ancient chanting. The words hung like crystals in the motionless air. Alan felt his pulse quicken, his skin tingling. Something was happening. The severed trunk began to vibrate, levitate, float higher and higher above the ground. Righting itself in midair, the enormous oak hovered over the base. The young girl never changed her sound or her tone or her rhythm. Over and over she chanted the solemn words. Gentle tree, I cry for thee. Your beauty bold, your wisdom old. O gentle tree, please grow for me. I sing thy praises, I sing for thee. The trunk landed powerfully on its base, the explosive sound reverberating through the forest. Alan watched in utter amazement as the tree, now completely upright and whole, began to sway ever so slightly in the wind. Black and white magpies and spotted woodpeckers landed on its lush branches. Blue jays and robins gathered to build their nests. Squirrels nibbled on acorns, and infinitesimal troops of ants trailed up and down the gray fissured bark. The young girl stopped singing. For a moment, she stood motionless, surveying the lofty oak. Content, she sighed, then skipped away. It's a miracle, he said, his voice filled with awe. Fairy, whom he had completely forgotten about, fluttered nearby. No, Alan, it's not a miracle at all, she said. It's the first sacred branch. He looked at her in wonderment. She began to fade, sparkling in the sunlight, her disembodied voice trailing behind. Witness life and praise all things. He looked around for the ancient book. It lay right by his feet. Kneeling, he carefully lifted the cover. Behold, the fresh green ink announced in cursive glory the power of praise. So praise is what I want to talk about, and praise is what came through to me. It's probably one of the most powerful pieces that came to me in this experience of the flowers speaking to me. And in a way, I've struggled with it for more than 25 years. So I just want to talk a little bit about praise, because some people have reactions to the word praise. And I'm just curious. I mean, we're in a church, so I'm guessing that you don't, but is there anybody here just raising your hand or even on Zoom that have a reaction to the word praise? Nobody here, but I've had, good. A good react, I mean, good or, yeah, I mean, thank you, Jamie, right? I mean, that's what some friends have told me. I have some friends that, had bad religious experiences when they were kids, and so they don't like the word praise. And I was talking to one of these friends who had a real reaction to the word praise. We were having a discussion on the phone, and she was looking up the meaning of the word. And one of the things that came up was Greek, to sing, right? To acknowledge, to celebrate. And I have another friend who's Christian, who was sort of a fundamentalist and then left the church and is much more of an expansive Christian. But she was saying that sort of strict Christians would really have a hard time with the idea of praising anything but God, anything but the Lord, that you can't praise nature, which is so interesting to me. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. And that sort of leads me into, where did this whole praise thing come from? And it came from the first book that I ever wrote, which is called Believing in Fairies, a Manual for Grown-Ups. And I'll go back to that non-fairy tale about the hibiscus bush talking to me. So the way this all began, my journey began with nature in the books, is that I was in Kailua, I was riding my bike, the hibiscus shouted at me, I wrote in my journal, and I went through this 2 to 3 week period where nature was just speaking to me. The trees were speaking to me, the flowers were speaking to me. My husband could confirm. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and grab my journal because I was getting all this information. And it was nature had principles and truths that she wanted to impart to humanity. And that's, at the end of this 2 to 3 week period, I had a manuscript. And I didn't know what to do with it because it had fairies in it. And fairies really represented the bridge between mundane nature and mystical nature. But in Believing in Fairies, fairies are a big part of the narrator sort of in this book. And I came out of this sort of fairy trance, and I had this manuscript and I didn't know what to do with it. And I ended up sticking it in a drawer for almost 7 years. Took it out when I got pregnant at almost 44, sent it to a British publisher because they are into nature spirits and fairies in England. He fell in love with it, published it. It became an international bestseller, translated in many languages. And it was here that this idea of the law of praise came to me, that I then wrote about in 2 more books. So I just want to read to you what came through about praise, because I'm hoping that at the end of this and for those of you on Zoom, especially people that have maybe some issue with praise, that will have a more of an expansive idea about praise. So this is very short. I'm just going to read a section from this. Praise is simply holy applause. Praise is simply the cosmic song that is sung by everything and everyone on earth. Praise is the reason that everything exists. Without praise, life as we know it could not be. Praise is not an idea or a philosophical notion. Praise is the universal seed. The idea of praise is certainly not unknown to human beings, and the ability to praise has not been lost by human beings. Sadly, what has been lost or buried is the desire or willingness to praise. For too many centuries, men and women have forgotten this basic and primal truth. And this is why it has become imperative that grown-ups everywhere devote their attention to the hidden kingdom. The hidden kingdom is a phrase that came through in this book, and the hidden kingdom just represents that deeper part of nature, the mystical part of nature. When you look at a tree, it's more than bark and leaves and root. There is something alive there. There is a beingness there, a spirit there. So that's what came through to me. That's the hidden kingdom. So you'll hear that phrase. According to the hidden kingdom, this is what I had a lot of trouble with. I just want to stop and say, this was 1993. This information came through. The book wasn't published till 1999. I had so much trouble with this And this is, I had to live with this for so many years, and I think it's so appropriate now. According to the Hidden Kingdom, the source of Earth's environmental crisis is the forgotten ability to praise. It is the loss of celebration among human beings. When human beings stop praising and applauding the majesty of life on Earth, the Earth herself begins to wither and die. All life needs to be appreciated and witnessed. All life needs to be praised. And this is Earth Day. And that statement, that the loss of praise is the source of Earth's environmental crisis, I can't tell you how much I struggled with that, because I felt like, what? What about, like, you know, the gases and the this and the, I mean, how could that be? And more and more and more and more, and I wrote a second book, and then I wrote a third book, I realized that there's deep truth in it. And one of the things that really came through in this book that spilled into the next book and the next book is that nature wants us. Nature desires us. Nature wants our love, and nature wants to love us, that there is this intimacy with the Hidden Kingdom that we all need to pay closer attention to, that we need to awaken to. And we all do it sort of naturally. I think, you know, like Arabella has a beautiful backyard and she tends her garden, or if you have a plant in your home and you tend to your plant, or you're on the beach and you feel something about the ocean. But I think we need to go deeper than just acknowledging it superficially. We need to acknowledge that there is an aliveness there. There is a beingness there in every part of nature, and it wants something from us. It wants our praise and our acknowledgement. We're doing good on time. I'll read you one more little section from this. So this is a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a tiny fairy who was very shy. She lived in a wondrous garden full of hollyhock and morning glories that rested beside a sparkling pond surrounded by graceful elm trees. She was very happy. But then one day, two grown-ups came to her sacred place and began having loud, angry discussions. This disturbed the tiny fairy. Why were they disrupting the peacefulness? So she snuck closer one day to listen, and this is what she heard. "We must change our lives and save the environment," said one. "You're too fanatic," said the other. "The world is on the brink of destruction," argued the first. "Don't shout at me," snapped the other. "You're hard-headed," accused the first, "and naive." "You're obsessed," shouted back the other, "and rigid." "Go to hell." They both stormed off, going their separate ways. Tiny buds were afraid to open. Blades of grass were too frightened to sway in the wind. The little fairy had to work very hard to bring back harmony, and to bring back harmony. She sang and danced and praised each and every bud and flower and branch and leaf. She sang and applauded each ripple in the pond. You see, despite her tiny size, this fairy's heart was large and full of love. Finally, after many, many weeks, the garden came back to its natural, peaceful state, and the tiny fairy was once again happy. The end. The moral of this story? Saving the environment certainly is an important and noble thing. But please make sure your heart is open when you take the action, because there is no such thing as a pure action, according to the Hidden Kingdom. There are only acts founded in love or acts founded in non-love. It will do you and the earth and all her creatures no good at all if you are working to help the earth out of anger or bitterness or fear or righteousness. Remember this. Don't save the earth. Savor her instead. Praise every day her beauty and expressions. On your way to dropping off the newspapers and aluminum cans for recycling, stop by that single pale tulip and praise her. Acknowledge her. Your heart and the earth's heart will benefit the most from this kind of generous act. I guess I'm pausing for a moment. Anybody want to say anything? I mean, for a brief moment, anybody want to share anything? And otherwise, I'll just go on. Yes, Bonita.
I'm just going to say I'm enjoying Mass, and I can really relate to listening to nature. I never like listening to every childhood, airplanes, to hear the birds, and I can hear the trees moving. And when I used to live in Virginia, I used to walk to the mountains, so I would like to listen to the water, springs that was going down the hill. And so we were doing it. And so I'm listening to the water. Yeah. It's weird. But I like to bring the nature and sound. Just the voice.
Thank you. I mean, I think that's really important because praise doesn't have to just be words that come out of our mouth. It's giving this attention to something, to the water rippling down the mountain, to the birds singing. I mean, it's really interesting to contemplate, even if you don't think it's true. What if to ask ourselves, what if it's really true that the source of Earth's environmental crisis is our lost ability to praise? Like, what if that's true? I mean, since 1993, I've been asking myself that question. You know, how could that be? You know, it's a profound question to contemplate, I think. And yes, did you want to say something? So just speak up so everybody can.
Like a lot of activists, and a lot of the activists come from a very angry place. So for me, I've always thought that, you know, if it's coming from anger, it's only a moment. You know, anger lasts a moment, whereas love and compassion, that's eternal. And so it sort of is like fighting for something in this form of compassion, because you find that I want to change something that's happening here, or maybe I just want to participate in a way where I feel connected. I think it comes from a place of innocence rather than a place of, you know, an anger, which is making wrong. It's not the place to come from to lift up the, I don't know, I would say vibration.
Right, to lift up everything. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that, and that's what I was reading in the Believing in Fairies books, that there's no pure action. There's love or non-love, and we know that love is where it's at, right? I mean, love is the most powerful force on the earth. And I grew up, interestingly enough, in a very political household. My father fought in World War II. He was very anti-United States, and I mean, just screaming, yelling, you know, I mean, a very serious activist, but there was so much anger, and there was just something that didn't work for me. You know what I mean? Even though everything he was saying was very right. So I think it's so important for us to go deeper than righteousness, like the little silly, not silly, but the sweet little story about the people arguing in the garden. I mean, like, what is the energy? Are we dragging our recycling, pissed off at our next door neighbor because they're not recycling, you know? Or, I mean, there's even another part, I believe, if I remember correctly in this book, where, I mean, now we're going into a whole nother thing, but even like if you're a vegetarian, you know, the whole, I mean, you could really be obsessed about, you know, anti-meat eaters. And if you're munching on your carrot and you're enraged at all the meat eaters, is that helping the planet? So I think we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about our hearts being open and really coming from love, whether it's sitting and listening to a stream, listening to the birds, just looking up at the clouds. I mean, this is what the planet is asking us to do, which leads me to the second book, because as I said, I think one of the most powerful things that came through in that experience, this 3-week experience of this download from nature, was this intimacy with nature, this how much she wants us. And so I want to read something from the Hidden Kingdom. Yes.
Before you do that, it occurs to me that all indigenous people have been in harmony with us for so long, tens of thousands of years. So many, since we've industrialized, civilized, we've isolated ourselves from that harmony that we've had this sense of separation from food.
Yeah.
I think that there was something about having multiple gods, because there was actually I think praising different aspects of the earth.
Yes.
Rather than just thinking there was only one that had a focus, which they developed in their own image.
Yes.
Rather than acceptance of a variety of things that they just.
You know, that's an incredibly important point. The indigenous cultures, I mean, they knew where it was at. I mean, and as we got more civilized and westernized, I mean, you know, things have gone downhill, but I mean, we have, I mean, you know, we blew it. I mean, the indigenous people knew, any part of the world, I mean, they understand this so deeply, way more deeply than us Westerners. So thank you. That's an incredibly important point. So I'm going to read. Yes.
I've obviously been with this book that what struck me over the last 25 years or so is that savor the earth instead of saving.
Please don't save the earth, savor her instead. Yes.
And I have always had a deep love for the ocean, the land, just the earth in general. But since reading that, really taking that to heart, I will take time in the morning when I'm walking the dog to look at this little flower that's 1/10 the size of my pinky finger, and just look at the magnificence that little flower that I would have stepped on without thinking. And just to, like you said, sit here and listen to the birds if we stop and listen to them.
Right.
Where we could look at the incredible beauty of these hibiscus flowers out here and look down at the same the color change. It's just magnificent. If we stop and savor it, how great an appreciation developed that I have developed to appreciate it even at a far deeper, greater level than ever. When you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's no lie. I said, what are you doing? Don't talk now.
Thank you, Dennis. So I'm going to read a short selection from The Hidden Kingdom, Discovering the Divine Presence in Nature, which is really a workbook, again, to try and bring through what came through here. And then this was a huge bestseller in the German-speaking countries, and then a German publisher asked me to write another book, so I wrote The Hidden Kingdom, which was published in German, and I brought it out in English maybe 10 years ago. So this, what I'm going to read now is just speaks to, because this is really another really important aspect to what I learned is that, and I've said it already, but I'm going to say it again, how much nature wants us and needs us. And so this is a poem, a piece called The Song of Nature. We have been calling you. We have been calling to you since the beginning of time. We beckon you. We whisper you. We welcome and invite. Listen, we are the songbird. Listen, we are the wind. Listen, we are the crickets dancing in the night. Listen, we are the falling snow, the creaking branch, the barking gecko. Always we call to you. Always we call to you. Always we call to you. Can you hear us? We are the doe fallen at your feet. We are the tree stump, the crushed spider, the beached whale, the limp sparrow tumbled from her nest. Do not yearn for us. Do not cry for us. Do not weep for the ending of our songs. You see, we cannot stop our singing. We cannot stop our being. We cannot stop our loving, you and only you. We are the lover who will not leave you. We are the bridegroom who pledges yes. We are the vow maker, promising, eternally promising. Always we are calling you. Always we are calling you. Always we are calling you. Can you hear us? We know you can. I love that. I love that too. I mean, that was really my experience. So, sort of coming to the end. So I want to talk about the title of this talk was Praise Where You Are. I've been talking about praising nature, praising the environment. But one of the things when I was preparing for this talk, this is my journal, by the way. I brought my journal. You can see I'm a fountain pen aficionado. I was really kind of going deeper with this because, well, something came up in the journal. And I want to read it because I think it's so important. So I wrote, what is the environmental crisis? I was kind of contemplating. What is our inner environmental crisis? What is our inner environmental crisis? If we are nature, what is the nature of our suffering? Is that what the message of praise is all about? To honor, to celebrate, to applaud our beauty, our extraordinariness, our majesty, to be in awe of who we are in the way we stand in awe of a massive evergreen or mountain range or sunset? How are we different? How are we really different? If we are expressions of the one source, if we are children of God, really, then why don't we feel the same awe and sense of celebration no matter what we look like or feel like? Just like nature has 1,000 faces, spiders and humpback whales, mountain ranges and deserts, centipedes and Milky Ways, the range is overwhelming and unlimited. So is our range, from illness to genius, cripple to ballerina. We have forgotten how to praise the beauty and glory and divinity of ourselves. And we have forgotten that nature needs us, wants us, desires our praise. The hibiscus and the orchid and the blade of grass and the coconut tree and the sand and minor bird and the clouds want our praise, need our praise. Praise is the universal seed. Nothing can exist without praise, even ourselves. And which leads me to the final piece that I want to share with you. That is, yeah, it's also in this book. So this I'm going to stand up for. This is one of my favorite poems that most of my poems just sort of dropped into me and they were done. So in a way, I don't consider myself a poet because poets like work at their poetry and like I'll be sitting and boom, and that's the poem, and then I live with it for 10 years. And so I don't even know when this came through, but it is absolutely one of my favorites. And it's a great honor for me to share it with you. And it's why I titled this, the talk, Praise Where You Are. So the title of this is Simple Instructions on How to Find the Buried Treasure. Praise where you are. Praise the darkness and the light battling for dominion on the field of your heart. Praise the nastiest stuff, the shadows and demons, the witches and goblins. They want love too. They need love too. Lock them away and they promise to return in vast multitudes. Praise where you are. Don your gown and your veil, your white tuxedo, and show up at your own wedding. Dance the dance of hallelujah. Marry everyone. Marry everything. There is no greater jewel, no more precious gem than the very spot you stand or arrive in now. Praise where you are. Praise where you are. The universe begs you, praise where you are. And so I'm going to bring this to an end and we'll open it up to any questions afterwards. And I'm just going to read the last few sentences from this book. Remember, you are the great awakener. You are the tender-hearted gardener. Water the soil of your own life, and you water the soil of humanity. When things get tough, lay down softly upon the thing you are most afraid of. And above all, praise where you are. The universe begs you, praise where you are. Thank you. You're wonderful receivers and perfect timing. And are there any questions, comments? Please feel free to ask on Zoom.
Including on Zoom.
Including on Zoom, if there's any questions or comments. Jamie, yes.
So, it's so relevant. When I had to, which I don't like to the, I read my third book on audio. And this was like this huge stream in vibration. And the downside stopped. Right? I said that. I'm sorry, I picked up band that was playing. And so we stopped and I had to go back to later. I was having again, so I stopped. For that. He said, oh no, you're not hearing that. I was like, no, I can hear it. So it's not looking at a recording. So I'll say back to you. That's me. And it was so revolutionary. Like, what are words? What is our vibration in relation to praise? It's even there are senses flooded with the emotion of anger, hate, revenge, all of those things. Whereas operating love or love, that's actually your sound. That's actually your worship. That's actually your praise, what you're feeling, not what you're saying. So I always remember that feeling of being confused by what we're hearing or what we're seeing, and then just going to that some of it. That feels like that. That is what I'm vibrating. Not necessarily our senses, but more what I'm experiencing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, David. Yep. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
David.
David, sorry, David. Go ahead.
I have both positive and negative associations with praise. Raised in a very conservative Syrian movement church as a 7, 8-year-old. I have this image of God as a superhuman creator and all, and who needed and required praise. And that heaven was angels and the saved sitting up there and forever stroking John's ego. I said, that was better than my image of hell. But
Right.
as I matured in my images of God, I think more of God as a loving, pervasive consciousness that is imbued in everything, including us and the trees, the flower. The whole thing is alive, even the streams, like the Indians had it right.
Right.
You know, and those like we are an expression of God, all of that is an expression of God. Because there's only God. That's it.
Yes.
You know, and so praise now is more for our purpose rather than God's ego. It's essentially we express love. That's the way we can express love. It's essentially appreciation.
Yes.
It's essentially that's it. Just being aware of the magnificence of it all. But still, at the same time, even though I'm in awe, most of the time, nature has both the growing part and the destructive. So a part of nature, too, is dying and is destroying and changing constantly. But yet, and that should make us even more appreciative for the moment that we enjoy. Because everything is passing. And so nature's tough. It's awesome, but it's tough out there. And so we not only need to praise and be aware of nature, but we also need to protect, nurture nature. To essentially, to a certain extent, humanize nature. So that it's not completely destroying itself like we are right now. So Gaia I guess there's a question about this. How does the concept of Gaia fit into your particular perspective?
Well, Gaia is the being of Gaia. Gaia is the beingness. My understanding of Gaia is Earth. It's the beingness. It's the living essence of the planet. So it's completely exactly what I'm talking about. We're praising Gaia. We're praising Gaia in the leaves. We're praising Gaia in the grass, in the sky, in the thunderstorm, that's Gaia. That's my understanding of Gaia.
So it's more of the accumulative spirit of the world, as opposed to the specific spirit. You have a spirit, the tree has a spirit. Some of my favorite trees I know have spirits.
Yeah.
But Gaia is more the sum total.
I think so. My understanding of it, but I also agree that there are specific spirits. There's the whole spirit world. That's the hidden kingdom. That's so.
The spirit for me is another word for consciousness.
Yes. Reverend Tim. Yes.
Yeah, I've been reading a book called Radical Wholeness by Philip Shepard. And this book is basically, I'll try to break it down a little bit, but basically about how in Western culture, we're very much about individualism. Like our image is a person raising themselves up and a person striving, and they move from janitor to milk clerk to, vice president to CEO. And we praise the power of the individual. And there was this study done, people from the East, like Japan, and people from the West, like United States. And they showed this 20-second video where there's this water scene and there's all of, the coral in the background, and there's different patterns in the water, and you can see the seaweed moving. And then there is a fish that swims in front. The people from the West tend to focus on the action of the fish, the individual. That's the people from the West. Forget how I said that. But the people from the West tend to see the individual action. The people from the East tend to see the whole picture, how all of it is fitting together, how all of it is living. And it illustrates how we are conditioned, preconditioned in our culture to think of ourselves as the doers. We're the ones in charge. We're the ones who can cut down this tree. We're the ones who can eliminate these animals because, you know, by God, we got to set up our house. Anyway, so what Philip Shepherd recommends is getting back. We're talking about indigenous people, getting back to experiencing that type of radical wholeness where we can feel and know from our entire being, from our body, know from our entire being, not just our head. We emphasize the head so much in our culture, but just knowing. So like today, I went to Kailua Beach. I live in Kailua, and was experiencing it from a place like I would as a child the first time I was at the beach. And really feeling the beach, really feeling the breeze, really hearing it all, just immersed in the sense of it. And it was a praise. It was a being in awe. And knowing I am not separate from that. I'm not just observing it as some detached, superior being. It was experiencing the wholeness of it, including myself. And that's what I hear in your books. That's what I hear in your writing, is this sense of wholeness. And again, the protagonist, he had separated himself from so much, including himself. So it's really about coming back to the self. So when we're hurting the environment, we're hurting ourselves. When we're hurting ourselves by separating from those sacredness, the sacredness that we are, we're hurting the environment. It's all interwoven.
I agree. I mean, I think, you know, a fundamental truth that I think is shared by so many spiritual texts and point of view is that the bottom line is that we think we're separate.
Yeah.
That's the core untruth.
Right.
That is that we think we're separate. And that's why we can destroy the environment. Because if we really were able to embody the truth of the one source and the unity and the wholeness, we could never do that. And so praise where you are.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing.
And any questions from Facebook? Okay, we have some comments. This is
I'll only read the good comments.
Okay, this is from Rhea Fox. Thank you, Marcia. Your enthusiasm is contagious. That's true. And then from Sue Bergman, thank you. Loved your sharing. This has been a presentation worth praise. Thank you to nature. Thank you to you. Love fairies, heart, and all they represent. And then there's a number of icons there. And then this is from Katja.
Again, she was on my email list.
Katja Kobel. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Pardon me if I didn't. Thank you, dear Marcia. It is a miracle to hear this message on this path. I'm so thankful for who we are, and I understood a little more of it today. Nature has always guided me, and I feel the blessings. I heard the call to be here today, and now I know why it was so important to be there in Hamburg at 4 a.m. on Sunday from the other side of the world. Thank you for joining me. Thank you very much for this opportunity to see you live and hear your message. Greetings, Katja. Thank you.
Danka.
Danka.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Germany. Wow. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. Saber. Yes, please.
First of all, I so, but I do have a question.
Yes.
We talked about seeing the bush.
Right. Not the burning bush. I ain't Moses. But right.
So my question is, some of these channels, did you hear the book like you're talking to? Maybe here.
Good question.
Well, that's a good question. Believing in fairies, which happened in I moved to Hawaii from New York City. We were here, and then very soon after, I had this whole experience, and my experience is that the entire book was channeled. So what does that mean? I mean, channeling is such a word that's tossed around. I mean, it just felt like because when this book first came out, I did some radio interviews, and some people were asking me all kinds of questions. It really felt like I entered another dimension. Mm-hmm. That's really what it felt like. Or I used to describe it as a window opened into another dimension. And so for 2 to 3 weeks, I was just sort of at a different vibration, is really what it was. And I was sitting in front of orchids and writing down songs. And, it's all sort of in this book. And I vividly, I'll just tell you this, I vividly remember, I think I was in Kaneohe. I vividly remember pulling the car over to the side of the road. And I'll even read this little piece. And I just wept and wept. I'm just going to read this. Yeah. So this came through. This was all about. Let's see if it says it. No, I'll just read it. It says, it speaks to the fact that we made a pledge to the Hidden Kingdom, and the Hidden Kingdom made a pledge to us, and we sort of better not renege on our pledge, sort of. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a promise. We made a promise, and here's what it came through. It came through as this: stay with me until the time when suns and moons and stars shall be no more. Stay with me until the time when rain and river and raging sea shall be no more. Stay with me until the time when hearts and songs and smiles shall be no more. Stay with me. Please stay with me. And then it sort of comments, together we made this pledge, we to the Hidden Kingdom and the Hidden Kingdom to us. We pledged our love. We pledged our hearts. We pledged our bright and shining wills and minds. We long ago fell in love with each other and pledged eternal companionship. We cannot break that promise without a painful consequence. Who will suffer? We will. We need not worry about anyone else. How will we suffer? Not by retribution or eternal damnation, but by the light going out of our eyes, the song ceasing in our hearts, the dance ending. Let us continue to celebrate, first with ourselves and our own humanity, then with those closest and dearest to us, then with our friends and community, then with the earth all around us. Let us continue to make the music we came here to make, to birth the sounds and songs waiting deep inside us. Since time began, fairies and all great beings have celebrated existence. Let us not be the ones who shrug our shoulders in defeat and say the party's over.
Wow.
So thank you for that. So anybody else? Yes.
I just wanted to say that I think that we have to also remember that every time we think, our consciousness will always be filtered through ourselves as mammals. We have mothers, which we have attachment issues. And so if we think of Mother Gaia, we have to be able to separate that sort of sense of Mother Earth from Mother that we had.
especially if we didn't have some good,
especially if you didn't have a good experience.
good relationship.
Yeah. So I think that there is something that we have to tangle in ourselves to be able to be really one with what nature is and who she is and the space that she holds, so that we're not confused by what it is that we do.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful comment. Yes. Anybody else? So my books are for sale if anybody's interested in any of them. There's also some flyer you can take. There's postcards. So thank you. It really was great for me, and I really hope it was good for you.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us online.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Very good to have you all here. Aloha.
Aloha.
Heidi's blowing kisses. And Marianne of Waikiki from Mexico.
Oh, wow. Mexico, Germany.
Giving her greetings.
Yes.
Yeah, we have an international
Proud. Wow.
meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right.